Cheers. Appreciate you taking time out of your day to come hang and chat.
It's always a pleasure.
To cut, light, and
Always
connect. Yeah, I just wanted to really hone in on conversations that I feel like have often been occurring behind the scenes, and even more so now, just as people start to venture out after the pandemic and what things look like. You know, we certainly experienced it here trying to launch something new in the market to see how all sorts of clientele, all the different sorts of guests that come through, they're being very intentional with, all right, if we're going to go out tonight, you know, we're not just going to the usual spot we rely on,
right?
Partially because a lot of those places either changed hands or changed names or are still scaling back into operation. But a lot of people are being much more forthcoming with, okay, if you and I are going to go out and we spend a decent amount of money based off of what we earn, I would hope that we have, you know, whether it be cool stories for social media, but at the very least, great opportunity for conversation, great opportunity to create an experience that we will be able to look back on. And, you know, I guess I'm just kind of curious what your impressions have been as people in this market try to resume business as usual of, you know, what are the biggest changes that you've noticed?
So what was interesting to me when COVID was first hitting and restaurants were first closing, and in my personal story, I left what was a very good gig at Charlotte Agenda, then and is now Axios now, because I wanted to start a website about food. I wanted to start a website about dining, a website that put restaurants in a larger cultural context. And then suddenly all the restaurants closed.
I was going to say, timing is just
phenomenal timing, right? So one of the things that I noticed was immediately dining became something that was more about community than it had ever been before. And I'll give you an example. I was out 6 to 7 nights a week before COVID happened. Any restaurant that was new, I was there. Any restaurant that I just hadn't been to, I was there. Because, you know, for me, that was the most important way to spend my leisure time. And I wanted to invest in that and make it part of, you know, my output of content. When COVID happens and you experience not just restaurants are closed or difficult to get to, but a legitimate fear, right? You're legitimately afraid every time you have to leave your house when COVID first dropped. So it became based on community for me. I went to Sapienza, Pizzeria Sapienza, in the garden level of the Sky House apartment building. Great pizza restaurant run by Nick and Sal down there. I went there because I had a previous relationship with them. Because before COVID happened, they would sit down at the bar with me because they noticed I came in a bunch of times and they would buy me a beer and we would chat about Charlotte stuff. I went to Vana. I went to Vana because I had a relationship with Corey Smith. And I knew she did, you know, some PR work for them and stuff like that. So dining became deeply focused on community. Where do I have the relationships? Where do I know my bartender and I know they could really use a tip because times are tough for them? You know, what is the meal that gives me comfort in the most stressful times that I have? And I think that restaurants and bars and, you know, cocktail lounges or whatever you are, they're really going to need to start zeroing in on that. You can no longer just be a bar. You have to be a bar that's about something. You have to be a bar that says something. You have to be a bar that presents something unique, even if it's just your people, even if it's just your bartender. I think that's the biggest difference is that there's not going to be the return of this, I'm dining just to dine. Dining has become a much more deeply personal thing than it was before.
Yeah, that's fair. And, you know, it's fascinating. I hadn't put 2 and 2 together before, but when all this first started, I was living at the Frederick, right there across the way from Sky House. And so I was in Sapienza a good amount of time too.
Sapienza is great.
But that's the thing. It's when you have that sort of staff, and that's a really cool example of a small little place uptown can accommodate a lot. But I would be willing to argue that everyone that goes in there forges some sort of connection, even at a baseline level where, oh, even if it's, you know, one of the family members that's helping them out, it's, you know, I would return and he knew what combo I had ordered previously, even though it had been a couple of weeks. Like, you've seen how many faces and you know that I want that slice.
Exactly. And it's not just Nick and Sal It's the people behind the bar. It's the people working behind the pies. You know, they really go out of their way to create relationships. You know, and I could see somebody maybe watching this video and they're like, oh, well, you know, I just do a thing in South End. I just do my little bar in South End, and we don't have the opportunity to make those connections. Well, I mean, it really comes down to who your people are. You know, there's no motive inherently for the girl behind the bar to learn my name just because she saw me twice. She doesn't have to ask my name because I don't expect her to be honest. She can just take my order and bring me my beer, and I'll tip, and like we'll do the thing we have to do. It takes an extra amount of authentic love for people and authentic love for community to be able to make that connection, and it starts from the top because you identify that in people and you hire that in people if you know how important it is.
Yeah. And I think part of it is structurally as a concept. You know, the one thing that did appeal to me as the idea for the vintage started to take hold was like, wait a minute, we're not turning tables here. We're actually inviting people in to say, like, we, on a very intimate level, we want you to be able to sit and spend a good portion of your day and commit to say, listen, like, all right, these size sticks on average will run you a good 45 minutes. Well, we better have something to talk about during that time. Otherwise, it's going to be awkward silence. And the last thing we want is an environment where everybody's just staring at your phone.
Yeah.
And so, you know, thankfully, all right, from cool decor to cool garnishes or what have you, all right, we'll get the phone out to document that and the fact that we're enjoying it and hopefully try to entice others to join us on our night out. But at the very basis, and that was thankfully communicated to everybody at the beginning of, all right, if you're signing on to this, you got to understand, you're not going to have your guest count be, you know, trying to set records here. You can go somewhere corporate for that, and if that's your style and you can thrive in it, awesome. You know, there's nothing bad about that. But it does seem like, especially based off of the reception that we've had so far, that is something that people value. Just the fact that someone would take the time to say, well, I do remember last time he asked for those bitters, ask him if he wants that again. And even though he never asked for your name the first time, just the fact that he remembered your face, you were sitting near the humidor, and he was able to kind of focus in on, wait a minute, like, we could still do that to make it feel a little more extra.
I remember Billy Jack Shack when they opened, and I was actually there at their soft opening. It was a Thursday afternoon. They weren't even really fully open yet. I took a couple coworkers there. And, you know, Billy Jack's has a great positioning, right? It's right there in North Davidson.
Oh, yeah.
So they've got a lot of things that go for them. But, you know, they were a new spot coming into a pretty entrenched neighborhood.
Ones that get very territorial.
Right. Right across the street from a restaurant with almost the exact same name, Jack Beagle's, that was already very popular. So they had some things going against them. But the reason that I ended up becoming such a fan of Billy Jack's was because from the second or third time I went, their staff was already like, oh, what's your name? What do you do? You know, what do you really like? You like this, you like that. And I was able to form, and you know, it's not, we don't want to make it seem parasocial. Your bartender is not necessarily your friend or anything like that. We know that the relationship on some level is transactional. Mm-hmm. But I appreciated that when I went to go sit at Billy Jack's, it was with someone who knew my name, who knew my order, who could go get my beer list out of the back without me having to ask for it. And that stretches beyond all the esoteric things we're talking about, knowing and loving people. It really goes back to what's the classic thing? Service. You're doing good service for people. I would sit down at that bar and someone would greet me. Oh, they greeted me with my name and my drink and my list, blah, blah, blah. What matters is that they greeted me. What matters is I sat down and I didn't feel as if I was bothering the bartender by asking for a drink. And that's something that a lot of bars and restaurants could really learn from, especially when it comes down to their people. There are a lot of table turners. There are a lot of people who want that seat you're in. There's a lot of people who are more interested in, you know, serving the person who's giving them googly eyes at the end of the bar than they are in serving the rest of the people. So it really just comes down to excellent service.
Yeah, my experience at Billy Jack's was a little more subtle. You know, apparently I started to be remembered for the fact that I had some liquid courage and attempted the fried Oreo eating challenge.
Oh, that's a wild goose chase.
And for a couple days, I was the champ. And
Really?
Oh yeah,
You did it?
Oh yeah. And then an old roommate had to.
But what did it cost you?
The meat sweats, but worse at about 4 in the morning.
I imagine. Fried Oreos. Whoever invented the fried Oreo, he was not working with the idea that somebody would be sustained on these. No. He was like, maybe they'll have 2 or 3 at a fair one day.
Not 15. Only to try to say, I'm the best in Noda for a day.
So you got beat after one day.
Yeah, it didn't take long. Post on Instagram, quickly replaced by another.
I kind of wonder what the record is now at this point. Too many people with nothing to lose.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
I can't even fathom. But that's the thing. Those guys, even though it's a subtle little game for the team, they get all in. And it's just something where it becomes part of the atmosphere, and all of a sudden, whether you like it or not, everybody's watching like,
so
I think you can.
And what a big part of it was, too, is that the little Bone Club thing they had, which they presented to me the first time I got there. And the Bone Club is set up where they give you a list, 100 blank spaces. You drink 100 different beers, and you get entry into a little exclusive club they have that gives you access to drinks and drink menus that everyone else doesn't get to see. They go on little bar crawls together. It's kind of like a little community that they have. But the first 20 people who did it, first 20 people who ever did it, got a special mug. They hang over the bar, and they engrave your name in the bottom of the mug. So the moment I got it, I was like, you know what? I think I'm going to do that. I think I'm going to go for it. So they made a gamified way of building community in their bar. And I was going to Billy Jack's around that time. And I'm getting back to that point now. I was going to Billy Jack's at least 2 to 4 times a week. Not only to try and do the Bone Club thing, but also because I felt it was enjoyable for me to go there because bartenders knew me and the service was good and the food came out fast and they treated people with respect. They treated you like a human being.
Absolutely.
So to this day, what brings me back to Billy Jack's after a couple years and a couple more pounds and a little older now, and the crowd there is very different. Originally, it was like a pretty straightforward Noda crowd, very small group of people.
Very much so.
Now I jokingly refer to Billy Jack's as the South End of Noda, just because of the crowd there is kind of more South End-esque than Noda-esque. So why do I keep going back? It's because I have a mug engraved with my name that's over the bar, and the bartenders know me, and the bartenders treat me well, and you can't quantify. If you really wanted to look back at tip receipts, you can quantify what that's meant financially for me and for them. So, I just feel like more spots could look to that model and look to how brilliantly I think Billy Jack's executed their launch here.
Yeah, even just conceptually finding a unique way to tie in, and all of a sudden, community, it's partnership in some way. That all of a sudden, yes, even though at its core it is somewhat transactional, at the end of the day, you have staff leaving, looking forward to coming back because they're like, well, I wonder what story he's going to come with from that other place or his work next. Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, it's not just a repetition of, well, we're offering the same thing. Because all of a sudden, no, he gets access to this. Mm-hmm. You're able to create so many cool opportunities as a result.
Is that hard for you in the space of trying to form those relationships with a lot of different people, a lot of different figures? So, for instance, we bumped into Nikki earlier, and Corey's a good friend of you guys, Corey Smith out there at Black Wednesday. Is it tough for you guys to really understand, putting in that same level of personal effort to someone who randomly shows up at the bar on Tuesday night as you do with a Nikki Wolf or a Corey Smith or another media type?
I think staffing was a huge part of this. And so, blessing and a curse of COVID and this time when all of a sudden you're trying to go through resumes. You have a combination of the ones that are applying because they just need the work, but then you also have some that are very purposeful, seeking out something that they feel is going to be rewarding and something where they can leave their touch on it. And that's a perfect example where you have multiple people here, and they were known for, even pre-COVID, putting their stamp on it at other locations in town. And so, whether it be Soul or Tilt or otherwise, and of course, all of the different things that you immediately associate with those names. Could be tapas, could be dive bar, could be everything in between. But they were able to kind of instill as part of their offering to a guest, listen, you could be the person who owns this city in some people's eyes, or you could be someone who just, finished a shift down the street and is just looking for one while the traffic dies down before he goes home. Right. You're going to be welcomed, and you're going to be offered something that everyone has a chance to here. And so it's fascinating. I love seeing the fact that if they see a car park on the street, they recognize the car. And there will be one of the corporate members, like his coffee will be made the way he likes it, ready when he walks in the door, whether he likes it or not. Half the time he turns around and he goes, actually, it's a gin and tonic type of day, but thank you for asking. I'll do that too. Yeah. And so it really challenges people, and I've had those moments in a hospitality standpoint where you start to wonder, you're like, have I hit the ceiling? Like, is there something else that I can be offering people or that I can be pursuing from a career standpoint that I don't already? And this is where a concept like this started to check those boxes, where all of a sudden it's, well, wait a minute. Just about everywhere before intentionally left some boxes unchecked of, well, do we care if we don't have anything that offers something at a certain price point? Or do we care that, the clientele can really delegate to just one neighborhood, one situation? And you're just sitting there like, okay, well, wait a minute. Like, surely there's a way to expand beyond that. And so already, we're I guess almost 4 months in here now, because of course it started out right as, because you were able to come to the media night. I don't remember.
I did miss the media night, for sure.
Because that was
I wanted to go.
Well, but we got to think about it. Because Nikki brought up a good point too. It was the middle of February. Some people were just starting to get vaccinated. Yeah. And so, of course, not only did we have limited capacity, curfew, everything else to try to be as safe as possible, everyone was trying to look at, well, is it even safe to open something new?
And you're nervous in those moments too, because there's a public perception about you. And I don't mean to hype up, I often think that writers in the city and media types in Charlotte think we're more important than we are, or think that people care more about us than they actually do. But one thing can be said for certain is that we certainly seem to care about each other quite a bit and what each other does. So there's always a conversation, should we even, what if I'm seen at this event and someone interprets that as me being unsafe, or, someone interprets that as me not caring about the pandemic enough. And we do absolutely live in a cancel culture. I don't know if I want to use the phrase cancel culture is very weaponized, right? But we live in a culture where, if you make certain mistakes on social media, or you make certain things that could be perceived as mistakes, you don't get a second chance. You don't get a chance to apologize.
Perception is truly everything at this time.
Right. Absolutely. We're coming out of the pandemic with less influencers than we went going in, because some of them did not pass the bar. I remember saying once to a friend, we looked at everything that happened last year, not just the pandemic. We lived through actually 2 major life-changing events in one single summer. And it was the pandemic, and it was the rise of these new civil rights protests and things like that. And I remember saying to somebody at one point, sorry, the bar just got raised and you just bumped into it this time. And that's kind of what ended up happening to some people, that we raised the bar. Like, you had to be more authentic. You had to be more real. You had to be more honest, and you had to have a little bit more of a heart behind what you did. And, we don't mean to exclude anybody, or we don't mean to have to knock anybody out of it. I'm not going to name names, but bars and restaurants or influencers who said the wrong thing and came out of it looking worse, did some real damage to their brand. All that to say, that goes into, that's not why I missed the media nights. Right. I don't care what anybody thinks. I'm an outsider. I'm a rogue. I'm a rebel. But, You definitely want to be careful, and you also want to understand that this thing is not over for the hospitality industry. There's a perception, I think, that if your restaurant was going to close, it would have closed by now. It's not true. We're going to lose a lot more restaurants over the next 12 months. We're going to keep losing spots because it's still touch and go, and with labor and where it is, and with development and what offers they're getting, we lost prices. We lost prices. Chicken Coop. Mm-hmm. That restaurant's been around longer than I've been alive. We lost them. I think they've been around longer than Bojangles has been in that same area. I think so, sure. I want people to understand that there's restaurants need you, bars need you. They don't need you on Uber Eats because it doesn't count. It doesn't work. Those fees don't work, and the servers aren't getting tipped on that. This industry needs people back out, and we need them back out safely, but we need them back out.
How do you think concepts should go about communicating that individually?
It's tough. People became emotionally attached to COVID era restrictions. And I truly believe that. I truly believe that people became emotionally and psychologically attached to the idea of me wearing my mask means I'm a good person. Me not going out to a restaurant and instead ordering Uber Eats means that I'm a safe person and I'm protecting my family. There's a movie I love called Dogma by Kevin Smith, starring a great cast of people. And they say at one point in that movie, humans always had great ideas. The mistake we made was turning those ideas into a belief system, because an idea is easy to change. Changing a belief is a lot harder. So I think there are people right now who hold the belief that you can't go back, that we can't go back to normal. I hear that a lot. It will never be normal again. We can never go back to normal. In some ways, that's true. But I think that the best way to communicate it for restaurants is to be very transparent about what these numbers mean. Be very transparent about what 50% capacity in a dining room actually means for you. Be very transparent about if you can't get enough bartenders to work a shift. Well, what does that mean for your service? What does that mean for the bartenders you currently have working who are going to be overworked and they're going to burn out and they're going to want to go somewhere else? And I think people don't understand the financials of the hospitality industry. They don't understand that most restaurants and bars don't have $2 million in the bank to take, 12 months off.
They probably don't own their building.
Mm-hmm. They don't own their building.
I was fascinated when I stopped in at a Duckworth location last week. And, they went so far as to put up a sign up front acknowledging, they're like, well, listen, there may be empty tables. That doesn't mean we have the capacity right now to seat you, serve you in a way that would make us proud.
Right.
And just to, they're basically asking, be patient. We obviously want you here. We want to do our best. And it was fascinating to me because I was like, okay, would I have worded it differently? Would I have tried to use a different medium to help deliver the message? Maybe. But at least they're being forthcoming.
Yeah.
Instead of taking it on the chin of, that came out cold, it takes forever for my drink to come after I asked for this. It's, listen, you have to understand the consequences of all of this and how it affects. There may be overhead costs for this business that you may not see on the surface. But it's going to be on the P&L statement whether they like it or not.
Right. There's some accountability that I've always had an issue with about the way we talk about food in this city. And it's part of what's made me in the past feel on the outskirts of some things. So I'll give you an example. If a restaurant opens and I go the first week and I write a review, a lot of people did not like that I did that. A lot of people got very upset that I did that. They said, well, it's their first week. They might not be ready yet. How dare you judge them on what they're doing on their first week? And I said, well, they took my card and they swiped it, right? I mean, they got the tip, right? I paid for the food. They're selling it, right? And I came up with this ethos that the moment you're ready to start accepting food is the moment you should be ready to accept criticism. So there's an accountability level of, if you're not ready to open, take a week, take 2 weeks, or something like that. COVID switched so much of that because so many restaurants, your choice became, can I open to something that is lesser than what my expectation is or my guest expectation is, or do I lose my business? And that was a difficult decision that I've never had to make. I've never had to make that decision. I've never had to look at a full staff of bartenders and waiters and servers and busboys and dishwashers and cooks and chefs and say, we're going to stay closed and you're going to make no money. Or we're going to open and you're going to have to come in here during a global pandemic where we don't know what's going to happen next and you're going to have to be in front of people. That's a tough decision I feel like people need to be a lot more sensitive towards. And who's the guy around the corner at the game bar, the arcade bar out there in South End when, it was still, you weren't allowed to open if you were a bar yet. Mm-hmm. And he said, well, I'm going to open. And people said, well, you can't open. It's illegal. He's like, yeah, well, I'm going to do it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people were really mad about that. But, I was like, you know what? What else? I mean, what would you rather he do? Is he going to go tell his whole staff you're all fired? Right. Is he going to, look at the business loans that he owes and say, okay, I'm just going to face financial ruin? He said, there's enough people in the city who don't care about COVID, unfortunately, or for whatever you want to call it. There's enough people who don't care that they'll come here and buy drinks and keep my business afloat and keep my staff employed. So it's a tough decision, and I have huge, empathy for anyone who, was faced with having to make that decision.
To sit in on some of those conversations, I wonder what the history books will end up saying down the line. But
should I do this right on the thing as it's ashing, or will that blow ash everywhere?
It's fine, yeah. From a light standpoint, as long as you've knocked off a good bit of the dead piece, then yeah, it should be able to pick right back up. Yeah, those Ashlands are great when it comes to that. But no,
Did I do it right?
Oh yeah,
there you go.
Yeah, you're good.
It does seem to be on fire again. So that works.
No, it's so fascinating to me to even just reflect on. We're basically looking at a year ago where all the concepts in the town were reliant on, will a bank write this loan application for us? And there were several of those relationships that got burned. And operators in this town will gladly tell you where they were like, yeah, these institutions of Charlotte, where it's banking capital, they were like, no, we're not willing to take that risk for you. Even though there wouldn't be risk involved the way that it was the program was designed, they had to find mom and pop places and other markets that would say, even though you're not our customer and we have no banking relationship with you, we're willing to do this because we understand and we buy into the fact that you're worth keeping around.
Right. That was the confusing part, or the tough part for me to try to have perspective on, was there were many people who wanted to blame the restaurant or the bar individually for not following a protocol. And, at the beginning, I don't think there was much excuse for it. At the beginning, where we're learning about it for the first time, and, you see many bars and breweries and things like that willingly took the step to close down because they wanted to keep their folks safe. Back when we knew that it was going to last maybe 3 weeks or 5 weeks or something like that.
Right.
That decision becomes a lot more difficult when you're not getting the help that you expected. So am I mad at the bartender because they packed their bar out? Maybe. But you know who I'm more mad at? The fact that you guys had no help. No one was helping you. The little PPP loans you were able to get, that wasn't going to sustain a business for what's going to be about a 2-year impact against the hospitality industry. Our federal government wasn't assisting the way that we thought they would. Our state government wasn't assisting. It was a tough decision to have to make. And then who are you really going to focus your attention on? And are you going to focus it on me, outraged Charlotte media person on Twitter, who is very comfortable working from home in my nice house with my cute dog and my partner's there, and I'm ordering Uber Eats every night. And I have no clue why anybody is so against this new normal. This is great. I'm in my pajamas, blah, blah, blah. So are you going to cater to them? Or are you going to cater to the 150 kids who are 23 years old and don't care about COVID And they will still come and pack your bar out and still give you a way to run your business and a way for your staff to make money. And there's no clean-cut answer. There's no clean-cut answer to it. I've never had to make that decision.
I mean, I had staff at the time, honestly ask. They're like, well, what should we do? Like, asking for advice on the decision when it's like, okay, well, it's essentially the same amount of money that you could get to stay home and collect from federal or state and what have you, as opposed to what a PPP loan could potentially do, if the business is able to secure it. And then there's the uncertainty of, well, we will open at the limited capacity that we can try to, and just trust that enough people are willing to take that risk and venture back out. It's bizarre. And I'm sure it's not just this economic impact for the next couple of years, but psychologically,
yes,
for the consumer for the next few years. This is going to be very telling on, and I think we'll still see a shift, whether it be suburb to suburb, neighborhood to neighborhood, of the people that are going to say, well, do we sacrifice in some way, shape, or form our time, our money, our safety? That's now another factor they put into consideration. You have still some to this day that were like, yeah, we wanted to come out and check you out since February, but we wanted to wait till the entire family got vaccinated.
Yeah. There's a psychological impact that is going to be difficult to change. When I walk into a crowd now, and, when it comes to pro-mask or anti-mask, I just like to accept that I'm an idiot. I'm a moron. I am not an expert on viral diseases or how they work. So a lot of really smart people got together and said I should wear a mask. So I trusted those smart people, so I put my mask on. Then those very same smart people got together and said, if you got your shot, then you don't need to wear that mask anymore. And those same smart people told me to get the shot. So when they said, hey, if you got it, you don't have to wear the mask anymore, I was like, okay. And, I wear glasses, so I was ready to get rid of the mask, the way it fogs up. Of course. But there's a psychological aspect even still. There's certain situations I walk into, and I might turn around and walk out because I'm like, this is too many people. I don't know who's vaccinated. I don't know what's going on. And it's going to be a tough transition. And, I think that's why people really still need to acknowledge that the hospitality industry has a lot further to still go. There's a lot of ground to make up. There's a lot of loans that still have to be repaid. And they've got to do it during one of the worst staffing crises that a lot of people have ever experienced. And I think there's a lot of fun little hot takes. Oh, well, if you can't pay a living wage, then you shouldn't have a staff in the first place. That esoterically can feel very true and can feel very good, and I'm sure it makes you feel like a very great person to say things like that. However, I don't know that we've necessarily cracked the code on exactly how that works, how restaurants function currently, and how thin the margins are in a lot of restaurants and hospitality industries. I don't know we've fully cracked the code on how to pay everyone a living wage, and I wish everyone could make a living wage. I just don't know. I don't know that we've cracked it how. I don't think it's fair to go to a bar or a restaurant right now and say, do it immediately or lose your business. Well, give them some time to think about it first. Like, give them time to work out, how this all works. And there are people who are making a lot of strides toward getting that better. Tip the kitchen. That movement is super, super impressive.
The ability to be transparent about, what can make you solvent. What can help you actually make strides and try to recover what has certainly been lost in terms of the missed opportunity. And it's bizarre to kind of see, I guess in the past when we've seen staffing crises, usually things would potentially relate to, well, your expectations of what education or certification they should have can certainly be a part of it. But now you're at this point where people have said, whether it be the uncertainty of what they're returning to bothers them enough, or just they even got presented with an opportunity where, do you want consistency and move to a salary and computer program for us or sell property for us? Get this certification and then try to move your way. There were opportunities that people couldn't say no to. And it's interesting to now then turn around and say, okay, well, yeah, at some point we have to acknowledge, and some of the concepts might have to simply adjust and say, staffing and the way we accommodate may have to shift in terms of a business model because those people are not going to be readily available.
I could see a lot of them moving on. I could see a lot of people who were probably entrenched in this field for a long time. And Charlotte, in Charlotte, staffing was always tough because new things are always opening, and food and beverage are one of the top, leisure activities in Charlotte. We don't have a zoo, we don't have a lot of parks or anything like that.
Yeah,
we don't have. Well, maybe one day we'll get a zoo. Yeah. We don't have. There's no mountains here. You got to drive a couple hours for the mountains. There's no ocean. You got to drive a couple hours for the ocean. So for a lot of people, food and bev is the main leisure activity in Charlotte. So if you were a bartender,
and to that point, even to take it further, I can remember when the Whitewater Center first opened, and people said, "Why is that here? Why would we do that?" And then all of a sudden, Whitewater Center has a decent food and beverage scene. Oh, okay, now we'll go check it out.
It was like Whitewater Center was kind of on that lame list with the Billy Graham Library and stuff like that of just like things that weren't that fun to do unless you were super into hiking or tubing or whatever.
Right.
Then they said, let's get a fancy logo and let's let everyone get drunk on the grass and listen to music. And now Whitewater Center is kind of a lifestyle. You look at it like anything else in Charlotte. If you're not offering an alcoholic beverage, I'm way less likely to come to your event, So I think that there were a lot of people here who were workers in the scene who already felt as if they don't have to take any crap from you, boss who I hate, because I'll go to the bar down the street and there's a new restaurant opening next week and there'll be a new one the week after that. And then you get into what happened with COVID, and a lot of them suddenly didn't have access to the main area of income that they'd had their entire lives. And these people did not sit there and go hungry for 12 months. A lot of them moved on. A lot of them found something else to do, whether it was a side hustle or they were, driving for Uber or something like that, or they took some YouTube courses in computer programming that they always wanted to do, or they've always thought they'd be a really great Twitch streamer. So they got themselves a little ring light, and now they play Rocket League for 5,000 people every week. Those people have now realized I don't have to be on my feet. I don't have to go to a bar and sling drinks. So I think that that worker shortage and that worker crisis, as people are calling it, a lot of it's not just that they're not ready to come back yet or they're looking for different ways and stuff like that. A lot of these workers are gone. They're gone. They found something else to do, and they're probably not coming back. So, what's the evolution of that? Do you guys just wait until the kids who are 17 now turn 23 in 5 years, and now you got a whole new generation of workers? Yeah, I don't know. It's a tough call to make and a tough sell to make. It's almost the opposite in the quote unquote professional world, because a lot of those, a lot of these jobs, have been shrunk, and people have absorbed responsibilities from cuts that were made, and there's a lot of jobs in that space that don't exist anymore. So you guys have workers that no longer exist. We have jobs that no longer exist. And, I cannot imagine being a 22 or 23-year-old coming out of college now. Imagine you spend your entire life looking forward to what your senior year of college is going to look like and all this good stuff, and then you lose it. You don't get your senior year of college. And, the older you get, the more you realize each year you have is actually the only time to get that year. You don't get that one again. So these kids aren't going to have another senior year of college. They're not going to have another first year of their career. So I've been really curious about that is what's it like? When I interview people for my current job at Jumbo, when we're looking to hire people, I always ask them, how's your job search going? How's it mentally going for you? Are you good? Are you okay?
Oh, I'd be real curious with you.
It's tough because they want to give a nice professional coiffed answer and things like that.
Of course.
I remember at times when I've been interviewing, and my first job was actually teaching. I was a public school teacher for 4 years. And when I was transitioning into marketing, I quit teaching, and you can't go back to teaching for 6 months after you quit. So it really got kind of touch and go there at moments, because the one thing I was really certified to do and had experience doing, I couldn't technically do unless I wanted to go to Union County or something. So,
right.
And who would ever want to do that? So I remember every email back, right? Every phone interview I could possibly have felt like life or death. And it was so high stress. And I feel bad when I get on with these kids and they're so nervous and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, just relax. I'm just a person. You'll find it eventually. So that's, I don't know. It's tough for the younger folks these days. I don't know. The guys behind the camera are pretty young. Maybe they've experienced some of this stuff too.
It's bizarre because to me, I think about the fact that when I was coming out of the Abbey down the way, everybody was trying to recover from 2008.
That's true.
And legitimately, at first, I was like, well, I have a business management degree, and I'm not sure what this looks like. And yeah, I remember going to those career fairs in Uptown, just being like, I don't know what this looks like. And sure enough, I had said at the time, I was like, you know what? I've been working in food and beverage. I'm going to stick to that, try to find a management role in it and find a way to utilize that for now. And, well, turns out I found something that I actually have a lot of passion behind. And even taking a sabbatical to try to do sales and whatnot, I find myself getting back behind the bar on the weekends, and you find yourself involved in it, and you find a passion, and it will probably take longer than you hope. And it might take getting prescribed something just to help with the anxiety for a little bit, or the right outlet to go work out and just work it off. But yeah, it is there. This has been awesome, sir.
It's been a pleasure. Cheers. Thanks for having me.
Absolutely, man.